And we're going to go on to the inserting method, where we actually insert something inside of our list instead of deleting it.
Dealing with the insert, we are going to have 4 different scenarios. We are going to have, if our list is empty, we're going to want to insert it in. And then we are going to have, if the value we want to insert is before our head, if the value we want to insert is after the tail, and then if the value we want to insert is in the middle of our list. So first thing that we're going to deal with is the possibility if it is empty. Well, if it is empty, there's 2 things that we're going to need to do. We are going to need to set head equal to the value that we're setting. So we are going to have to make some new value, and we're going to say head is equal to this value. And then tail is also going to have to be equal to this value. But this value is equal to head, so we could either say value or we could say head. And that is how we would create our empty list, and that's how we would insert something into it. Second scenario, as I said, is if we want to insert before our head. So this makes the assumption that we have a node right here, and it is already pointing head here. Now we are going to want to insert a node right here, and so to do this, what we're going to have to do is we are going to take our value, and so to do this, what we're going to want to do is we are going to take whatever value we make, and we are going to set the next value to head. So this is going to be our value, and to link this, to make a link, we have to set it to head. So value dot set next, because we're setting the next thing to the head. And after we've set this, we've created this link, and then we are going to have to do head dot set prev, and then we're going to have our value. And that's because we need to make this link back here. Once we've made these links, what we're going to need to do is we are going to set the head to this value, because it's no longer going to be pointing in here. So since we're just reassigning the head, we're going to say head is equal to value. And then after this, we are going to want to make this null, because this is not pointing to anything this way. So to do that, we're going to do value dot set prev, because it's the previous pointer, to null. And that is how we would do that if we were inserting before our head value. The next thing is if we are inserting after our tail. So we have our tail like this, and we want to add something in here, and the tail is pointing to here. We need to first make some links. So we are going to have our value. We'll just do value. And when we code this, we'll probably call it temp or something like that. And we'll say temp dot set previous, because this is the temp or the value, and we're setting this to the tail. So we can create this link right here. After we do this, we are going to do tail dot set next. And what are we setting it next to? Well, we want to create a link here, so we're going to set next to value, so it links it to that node. And then after we do this, we want to reassign tail to be value, so we're just going to do tail is equal to the value. And lastly, we want to make this value null because it's not pointing to anything this way, so we are going to do temp dot set next, and we're setting the next pointer to null. So those are 3 scenarios there. The last scenario is inserting in the middle. So we are going to have 2 lists here. These are already going to be linked to each other, and then we are going to want to be inserting something in here. There's too much code to write it out as we've done here, so we're gonna have to code for that, but we can come back here if we need help doing so. We need to iterate through our list because we don't know exactly where it is, so we are going to implement a for loop once we get to somewhere where we can insert this. Remember, our list has to be sorted, so we are going to use a compare to, and we'll compare these values, and that will decide where it'll sort it for us. And remember, what compare to does is it compares the length. If the length is the same, then it compares the character order. So it will go until it sees fit. Once that happens, what we need to do is we are going to break this link. We are going to set it to here. We are going to break this link, and then we are going to set it to here. We'll need to make a new link to here and a new link to here, and that is how we would insert this. So that is kind of the theory behind this. Keeping this up so we can see, we're going to start off if our list is empty. So we will do if head is equal to null. And if head is equal to null, that means our list has nothing in it. And then we're going to set head equal to the value that we're passing in. Well, we want to insert this name, so head is going to be equal to name, and then tail is going to be equal to head. We can see that we have an error here, and that is because this is a string and our head is a node. So what we need to do is we need to take this string name and send it to our node class by using this constructor here and add it to our node. That means that we are going to have to make a new node. We're going to do node, and we'll call it current, and we'll set it equal to a new node, and we're going to pass in name. So we're creating a new instance of our class, passing in name, and now name is in our class. Instead of setting head equal to name, because it's still a string, we are going to set it equal to current, and that'll be the value that's stored in here. Now we want to insert before our head, so we are going to fall into an else if statement. And then we are going to do current dot get data. So we're going to get the data that has the string name in it, and we're going to compare it. So we'll do dot compare to ignore casing. In the instructions, it says that we don't have to worry about casing, but this is just for redundancy, because the file given to us has some lower and uppercase names in it, and it might not work 100% when we try to display it. So compare to ignore case, and what we're going to be comparing to is the data that is in our head, because we want to insert before our head. So we want to do head dot get data, and that will give us the data. Now we're going to insert in our head only if this current value, this string value, is less than our head, because we want it in order. So what we're going to write here is that if it's less than head, we will be inside of here. Also, this should be else if, not if else. So now the code is written properly, and we can start setting what we've done in OneNote. So we want to set the next to the head. So we want to do current dot set next, and we're setting it to head. And after this, we are going to do head dot set prev, and we're setting this to our value, which is current. And then after we do this, we are going to set head equal to our current, because we want to point our head to the current value, which is now the head. And then we are going to do current dot set previously to null, and it's set previously to null because we are not going to be pointing anything. And that's how we would insert before our head. Now we are going to insert after the tail. So we're going to do another else if statement, and we are going to compare. We're going to do the same thing we did earlier. We're going to do current dot get data, so we get the current data that we're looking at. We're going to do dot compare to ignore casing, and then we are going to do tail dot get data, because we're comparing it to the tail. Now if our value is greater than our tail, we will insert it afterwards. So we will do greater than 0. And now we are going to be inside of here. So we want to set our previous value to tail, and we're looking at current. So we'll do current dot set prev to tail. That way we can add it into our list. I put get, it should be set prev. And now we want to point our tail to the value. So we are going to do tail dot set next, and we want to point it to our current. After this, we want to point our tail to our value. So current tail is equal to current. And then after this, we want to set the next pointer from our current value to null. So we will do current dot set next, and we're pointing it to null. So that is how we would write the insert for if our list is empty, before our head, after our tail. And now we're going to do the middle. For the middle, we're simply just going to have an else, and this is going to catch every other different scenario that we could fall into. We're going to want to iterate through our doubly linked list so we can get to the specific spot where we want to insert our node. So we are going to use a for loop. We are going to use a node temp and increment this,
and compare it to our value, which we've stored in node current. So node temp is equal to head, and we're running this for temp dot get data. So we're going to get that data, and again, we're incrementing this every time, and we're going to now compare this. So dot compare to ignore casing. So we're going to use dot compare to ignore case, and we can see that if we have a string is greater than our temp.get data, we're going to return a negative number. If it's equal, we'll return a 0. And if the string that's going to be inside of here is less than the string out front, we are going to return a positive number. Well, we want to go through this until this string is bigger than what we have out here. That way we can break out and then add it in. So what we are going to do is do the dot compare to ignore case. We're then going to pass in our current dot get data. So we're going to get that value. And again, we are running this as long as it is less than 0. And if it is less than 0, again, that means that this value has to be smaller than this value. Once this value is greater than this value, we know we have to break out and add it before this value. So we are going to cap that there, and then we need to iterate through our temp. So we are just going to do temp is equal to temp dot get next, and that will get the next value. And then inside of our for loop, we are going to want to increment our next value. We also need to keep track of the previous value, so we're going to need a node, we'll call it current prev for previous. We are going to initialize it to head as well. In our for loop, we are going to do current next dot get next, and this will get the next value. We're going to do the same thing with prev, so current prev dot get prev, and this will give us the previous value. After our for loop is when we are going to want to write our code. So coming back in here, we'll write in a new area because this is pretty big. So we are going to have our leftmost node. We are then going to have our rightmost node, and currently these are linked to each other. Now we want to take our current node and insert it in here. So this will be prev, this will be our current, and this will be the next. What we need to do is set the next value from here. So remember, there's some value in here and some value in here, and they're pointing. So we need to point this to here. What we're going to do is say current. What we need to do is insert this inside of here, and then we are just going to move our next over, and then we are going to relink. So first we are actually going to move our next over. We are going to do current next, so that is going to be this value right here. This is going to be current prev, and this is current next. That's how we wrote it specifically in our code. So current next is equal to current next dot get next, and that is linking it to the next node. Now we want to link the previous, so we're going to do current prev dot set prev. So we're setting the prev, and we're going to set it to the current value. So the first line, this line up here, current next is equal to current next dot get next, is going to set the next right here. It's going to point it this way. Now current prev dot set prev current is going to take this previous pointer and point it to our current, which is here. So now these two are going to point to each other. After this, we're going to continue with the previous right here. We are going to do current prev, and what do we want to do? Well, we want to make a link between here. So we're going to do dot set next, because this is in the next position, and then we are setting it equal to our current. That way we can link it. So in here, we have current prev dot set next. We're looking at this next value, and we're setting it to our current just like this. So we have linkage right here, Now we just need to kind of have this reversal part so we can look back at it. We are going to focus on our current now. We're going to do current, and we'll link the previous first. So we'll do .setPrev, and setPrev is going to be this part right here, this previous, and we want to set it here. So if we set it here, we're going to do current.setPrev, and we're setting the previous to current prev, the current previous value. And that's how we would do that. We're going to do something similar for next. Notice we need a linkage here. So to do this, we are going to use the current next, which will be this, and then set it to current next. So in here, we will do current.setNext, because that's the next position. And then inside the parentheses, we're setting current next, because we are setting this right here. And now these links are broken, and we've linked all of our nodes together. First, we moved this over. Then we created a single link between here and here. And then from our current, we linked here and here. And so that is how our method will look. Inside of our code, I'm going to move this over so we can see the code we've written out in OneNote. First thing we want to do, like I said, is we are inserting something where the previous next value was. So we are going to have to move our next value over. We're going to do current next, and remember this is storing the next value. The current is the value we are looking at, that's where we put name into it, and then the current next is the current next, current prev is prev, just as we did in the OneNote. So current next is equal to current next, and we're going to do dot get next. So we get the next value. After this, we are going to do current prev dot set prev current. I guess I made a mistake here because we want to deal with the next first. So this should not be prev. Instead, this should also be next. Again, because we are dealing with the next first. Good thing we caught that. So we'll have current next is equal to, and now we want to set the previous to the value that we're inserting. So current next not equals, because we're actually just setting it. So equaling and setting are two different things. Current next dot set, and we're setting the previous value to the current. So we're just going to have current inside of here. And then after this, we want to set the previous value. So current prev, that's going to be the first node to the left, equal to our value that we're putting in. That way we can have a linkage. We're going to have current prev, and this holds the previous value. We're going to do dot set next, and we're going to set current inside of here. So now we've created a link. After this, we want to create links to our previous and our next from the value that we're inserting. So we're going to do current dot set prev, and then we're setting the previous to current prev. We want to set the next value, so we're going to do current dot set next, and then we're setting current next in here. And that should be our entire insertion method. And if we look at this, we can see what we've done right here. This is all the code for it. We've inserted if the list is empty, inserted before the head, inserted after the tail, and somewhere in the middle. And this should cover all of our bases. So that is the entire insertion method done.